Greetings, everyone. Another episode of The Turning Point. How are you doing today, David? It's just me and you today, and we're going to explain you guys the
Doing
reason
good.
in a minute. Is everything right?
Yeah. Oh, things
Yeah,
are things are going great.
yeah, that's the first episode we do alone, and we don't have Versan and Vandal here for a good reason. It's the
Mhm.
birthday of their father, and I also want to take a second here to wish. I think his name is Omar, so Mr. Omar
Yep.
Ojaran,
Happy
to wish,
birthday, Omar.
yeah, and to
Excuse me.
congratulate him because he has made two amazing sons, right? And I think I
Yes.
myself got inspired by the two of them since I started creating content, especially on YouTube. It has been quite a journey of Versan and Vandel. So I want to wish them a great time with the family. I know family is always the foundation, in my opinion, right? David, is something you want to add on that?
I absolutely agree. I think Omar, you did a fantastic job. These are two amazing young men that really do inspire people in this community. Certainly, they're people that Judy and I personally respect. And by the way, the nice thing is this live stream is streaming out on their channels as well right now. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to take some time to explain to you guys. And they're going to be back here next Monday as usual. So just wishing her a happy birthday. And now let's get into so many things happening in the markets. And we kind of spoke a lot about that a possible correction was imminent. I said this multiple times. And I want to start hearing from you, David. What do you think of these last episodes of the German government that has been clearly, if I might say, manipulating the markets? They actually dumped a lot of bitcoins out there, and that has clearly impacted the price of most digital assets out there because, as we know, uh, everything is still following Bitcoin, with exceptions. I'm talking here about the small market caps, but overall, most cryptos are following Bitcoin, even though sometimes XRP seems to not follow. But it's funny. Even a bit frustrating for some people that when the markets sometimes are going up, XRP is not moving up, and then when the markets are dumping, then XRP follows and dumps as well. But I want to hear your comments on that, David.
Well, definitely. I think what we're watching right now, like how many people really knew that Germany and how many other nation states out there hold this amount of Bitcoin into the billions of dollars? And I do believe that this is absolutely strategic manipulation of this digital asset space, like we've seen in the past. In prior bull runs, one thing I brought out is you would hear rumors from China or India that they were going to ban Bitcoin, and that in and of itself would cause the reaction. Well, now what you have is you have these exchange traded funds that are being traded in markets around the wide world. So just the rumor alone isn't going to shake, the retail market the way it used to. So here you have a nation state that is literally dumping thousands of Bitcoin onto, by the way, multiplicity of different platforms and exchanges. Now, I'm going to try and share my screen. I have let me just take a look here. I have a little clip here that I want to, or not even a clip, sorry, an article about this. It's right here. And if you can make sure this goes up. And this is today. This is today, July 8th, 8:52 a.m. German government continues to transfer thousands of Bitcoin to exchanges and, by the way, market makers. Now, here's the quick take, and this is all I really want to point out right now. German government transferred 133 Bitcoins to a market maker, Cumberland DRW, before sending 150 coins to crypto exchange Kraken and 1,000 coins to B2C2 Group. It also transferred 300 Bitcoins to Coinbase, 300 Bitcoins to Bitstamp, and 1,000 Bitcoins to market maker Flow Traders. So I'm just going to go back and stop sharing that. But right there, we can see now, when have you seen a nation state that is collecting tax revenue? If they need money, they have a central bank that can create the money they need. That's what we're seeing in the US for sure. And I'm going to point something out that later when we talk about the weaponization of currency. But you're absolutely watching a nation state interfering with the market, and it has to be with absolute intention. They are flooding these exchanges with Bitcoins to sell to suppress the price. Now, why, oh, why are they doing that? And guys, I genuinely believe it's tied to this agenda in the economy, to literally the transfer of assets, suppressing the market. They're doing everything they can to hold back the lions, because eventually the dam is going to break. And I absolutely believe we're going to see these things take off. Now, it's in my estimation, this is not an independent move. There's no way that these kinds of market manipulations and volumes would be happening independent of discussions going on behind the scenes with other major players in this space. So, Ito, those are my thoughts. What's your take on the whole thing?
Yeah, so just to complement some numbers here, I have on my other screen here. Just in the last hour, they sent 5,200 bitcoins, which is around $297 million. And if you think this is over, it's far from being over. They still hold over $1.3 billion in Bitcoin, which, of course, if they sell market price, that has a huge impact. Now, I totally agree with you that they want to hold the horses. I think I think the longer the bull run takes to really start, the more they're gonna cook people, and I think that is what it really is about. Because as we are entering a huge economical crisis, and sorry, we are entering, not we are already amidst an economical crisis, I think people are forced, and I have messages on a daily basis, people are forced to sell their positions in digital assets, right? So have people who perhaps need to sell their XRP, have to, they just can't hold any longer, and that's very unfortunate that they are forced to sell their digital assets for the most basic needs. And that includes paying for the bills, that includes the groceries that are extremely expensive right now. And I was just realizing to myself, I think 5 years ago, I remember at some point, I was very, like, still in my early days, I didn't have a lot of money, but I had set a goal for myself that I wanted to make 10,000 euros. That's the equivalent of $10,000 per month. And I just realized that nowadays, $10,000 is not even a significant amount of money, especially if you have a family. If you have other people that you need to take care of, $10,000 is not enough anymore. And that's really the situation that we are living in most of countries. I'm not talking about, I am in Europe, so, but I speak to Americans on a daily basis, and you can correct me if I am wrong, David, but I don't think $10,000 is a large sum of money anymore. And at least here in Europe, you can barely make it if you make $10,000 per month if you have a family. And I think the situation really comes down to decelerating the bull run. And of course, they have all the instruments that they want that at their disposal so that they can manipulate the price. This was one of the cards that they can actually pull, but they do have many cards. And I did this analysis a couple of weeks ago. I don't remember if with only Versan or if you guys were also on the podcast, but I did say that we are operating under a low volume environment. If we compare 2024 cycle with the previous all-time high of Bitcoin 2021, and never tired of repeating that. If you look at the order books, now we have around 30% of the amount of order books, and we also have less than half of the volume. So the conclusion is that you don't need extremely high volume to make new all-time highs, but the price of an asset really comes down from one simple denominator. You need to have more buyers than sellers. And because we don't have strong support levels, that's why when you have German government that decides to sell 500 million, $700 million in Bitcoin, you just don't have enough liquidity to absorb these selling walls. And then we have the price that dumps massively. And it really shows to me that the bull run is a bit more far than most people were expecting. I think a lot of people were in ecstasy, especially on Twitter, saying that Bitcoin would hit $100,000 before the halving, and all of this hype narrative. And they just have the thing is, you see a lot of charts and technical analysis, right? And all of these people are ignoring the whole. It's like, I said this in one of my videos. In order to have to make a cake, you need many ingredients, and you just don't look only for the charts. And it's the eggs, the butter, the flour. And right now we have all the elements for a week support levels for Bitcoin, and people are overlooking also the geopolitical tensions, and also overlooking what BRICS nations are doing, and overlooking how weak the US dollar is right now, and all of the massive layoffs that are coming, artificial intelligence. So, so many factors that we have to analyze. David,
I
the
agree. I
word
think
is.
it's totally. Oh, sorry. I think it's totally strategic what you're describing there. I looked in the comments, and there's an individual in the comments who said, "Hey, $10,000 a month. That's crazy. I can make it a 10." Well, the thing is this: we're talking about different regions around the wide world. In the Western world right now, $10,000 a month is absolutely nothing, and they know it. Why? Because they're destroying the purchasing power of this money. And this is where they're weaponizing currency. All of these major Western central banks have absolutely been doing it. And when you talk about, the general cost of living, I mean, look, rents alone could be $4,000 a month just for rent. Then on top of that, you're talking about insurance, prices for fuel, prices for power, prices for this. You go to the grocery store, and we've seen these viral TikToks where someone shows, a grocery bill from a year ago, and then they show the grocery bill for this year with the exact same items on it, and it's 4 times as much. I mean, the average people are being decimated by inflation. But the thing is this: the way in which they define inflation and those kinds of things is absolutely obscene. They're not taking into power, and they're not taking, the cost of groceries in there. And we're seeing it now. I do want to share another little article here that talks about this whole inflation thing. And this one I saw this morning when I was searching through the hedge on different things. And what they're talking about is the fraud of monetary policy. But what I want to point out is right down here, and this is wild when you consider this. Now, this came out of a Federal Reserve chairman back in 2006. It was Alan Greenspan. And of course, Alan Greenspan did a whole bunch of different things in terms of monetary policy back there during that time to get, the inflation down and everything, because it was into the double digits. But he basically said this: the United States can pay any debt it has because it can always print money to do that. So there's zero probability of default. What an obscene comment to make when you really consider that the US, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could just print money at will to pay our bills? We can't. We're the ones that become the victims of this weaponization of the currency. And something I want to point out here is right down here. Listen to this. The casual use of the word weapon is apt. In the hands of a state monopoly, which of course central banks are, they're the ones that issue and print the currency, money can indeed be weaponized. Inflation is the artificial expansion of money and credit that has the effect of transferring wealth from all money holders to the inflators. What are we talking about there? We're talking about the transfer of wealth from the average everyday folks, right, back to the central banks, who are the inflators. This may be done under the guise of policy, appearing official, orderly, and legitimate, but it involves elite in power taking actions that would otherwise be criminal behavior. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to stop. And when you think of right now, when you see a German government going out there, they have means to make their budgets without selling Bitcoin. Why are they doing it? To crush us, to literally shake people out. And you're absolutely spot on. The economy in the real world, in the Western world, is really squeezing in. It's contracting at its fastest pace as it ever has. And you're watching people losing the ability to maintain lifestyles, rents, mortgages, you name it. You got credit card debt at all-time highs and defaults on credit cards right off the Richter scale, higher than it's ever been. And people are in this space. I've already been hearing people talking about having to liquidate positions in order to satisfy demand on their finances. And it's a shakeout. It's an absolute shame. Let's keep the prices suppressed and crush the economy. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. People are going to snap. They're going to have to. They're going to run to their wells, their sources. Whether it be, if you put gold and silver aside, whether it be crypto, whether it be savings, they want to diminish and decimate that because they know the average people are going to try to maintain the current lifestyle that they have for as long as they can. Right. And so, of course, what are they going to do? They're going to liquidate these assets. Now, meanwhile, the bait to the trap was this: easy credit in prior years, right? You'd walk into every department store, hey, credit card, credit card, credit card, giving out credit cards, easy credit, until the point where people got so over their head encumbered that now they can't maintain it. Why can't they maintain it? Because what they were doing is they were banking on a future job always being there. They were banking on a strong economy always being there and the ability to just at least maintain those liabilities until, something happened. They could, maybe pay them off. Reality is the rug got pulled out from under them. Their jobs got decimated and taken away. We went through a massive one of these back in 2019, 2020. There's decimated. A lot of businesses never, ever came back. Never came back. Consolidation of power. This is exactly what's going on. And when you see a national state government interfering in a free market to the point where they're dumping, like you just reported there, 5,000 plus Bitcoin just today. That is absolutely massive manipulation in a market that under normal market buying and selling would be doing. They are dumping. They're dumping, and they're doing it with intention. And I absolutely believe you're right on this, hitting the nail on the head. They're doing it to really crush the middle class. The middle class is going to be almost non-existent. In fact, now you really can't say we have a middle class. You have those that can make it and those that aren't making it. Because it's not middle class. It's not middle class to, literally be borrowing from the equity in your home, treating it like an ATM, having massive credit card debts, owing monthly payments on vehicles. You're not the middle class. You're borrowing from a future from somebody else. You could not afford that lifestyle if you had to pay for it in cash yourself. So you are not the middle class. It's an illusion. Complete illusion that the elites have allowed us to believe. But really what we are is the working poor. Because you're so far in the hole that you have negative net worth, and literally, trying to get out of it is nigh on impossible. And now they're making it that way. And another thing I think that they're leading us into is geopolitical conflict on a global scale that is going to not just cost people in finances, but it's going to cost these families in lives. That's what I think is going down right there.
Totally agree. I think the geopolitical tensions are being overlooked by most of, especially crypto analysts. Okay, I see people getting a bit confused. I want maybe to rephrase myself and explain a better way. What I'm telling here when I'm saying there are weak support levels, I'm just saying that on the short term, there is indeed the possibility for a lot of price volatility. And that's exactly what we have seen in the last, let's say, in the last 10 days, in the last 5 days. I remain extremely bullish for the long term. And I'm not talking the next 10 years when I said the long term, from 2025 and beyond. I just believe that they're going to try to squeeze the retail investors out. They really want people to sell their digital assets, and they will use many techniques, right? So inflation goes up, they raise the cost of living. And when I said about 10,000 before, what I really meant is that, and I say this from the perspective here in Europe, and perhaps David can share some of his thoughts as well. If you take the average European capital, right? Let's take real estate, for instance. And I talk with knowledge because I'm also a real estate agent, former, but I was a real estate agent in Portugal for 4 years, and I also work with real estate. I also own real estate, so I really do have a deep understanding of real estate. So the point I'm trying to make is that the price per meter square in Europe, if you are the average worker, there is no way you can't afford a house anymore. Take Lisbon, for instance, okay? The national wage for Portuguese people is something around 800 to 900 euros, right? The price of an apartment in the city center of Lisbon is something around 350,000 euros to 400,000 if you are lucky. So the price of the meter square there is at least 4,000 euros, okay, if you are lucky. And the same is true for Milano, the same is true for Paris, the same is true for Madrid, the same is true for Barcelona. You take the biggest European capitals, and don't get mistaken that only the capitals are going to be like this. You have other countries that is just expanding, then Barcelona became expensive in Spain, then Valencia is the next one, and the show goes on and on. The point here is that they really want people to own nothing. That's the end goal, because now in how many years the typical worker is going to be able to afford his own property without actually asking money for the banks? There isn't the possibility. Or you are lucky, and there is you had your great parents that had properties, and you inherit that properties. But the reality for most citizens is that they really want people to own nothing. And just yesterday I shared a video on my Twitter. I'm not sure if you guys have seen it, that now they're replacing the human labor with machines. So you have this robot that is operating in some gas station, and you have a remote worker that is actually with the AI operating the robot. So he's doing the movements from his own home. And now, instead of paying the worker, you're going to pay some guy on the Philippines that is able to operate this robot with the AI glasses. And that's how most people are going to lose their job. So they really want people to not be able for the most of basic needs. And the consequence of that is that they're going to have to sell their digital assets. So that's why, my opinion, they are doing this price manipulation so that the markets are cooling off, right? Otherwise,
Mhm.
if there wasn't this market
Yeah.
manipulation, XRP would not be, let's be honest, XRP would not be trading at 40 cents. They're really
No.
trying to make people lose hope in most of the digital assets. And
Yeah.
I tell you, every day someone comments, I'm giving up, I'm selling, I'm tired of wait. Or you have people who are just tired, and you have people who just can't afford anymore, and maybe they have to sell their bag because next month they have to pay the
Yeah.
rent. And
Yeah.
that's how the situation is going.
I
Is it
agree.
that different?
I think mhm. No, I agree with that. I think too that once they get to a place where they feel that they have shaken out enough hands, because remember, these guys are, they have the ability to see, where people are at, how many wallets are holding what, da 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 da. That there will be a turnaround. I mean, we've seen it in the past when they manipulated these things. We've seen it like when they did a revaluation of gold. And I absolutely believe they might not make it illegal to hold gold, but I think they'll push the situation for those that do. A lot of people will end up having to capitulate and sell what they have just to maintain life. I agree. I think that's what they're doing here when it comes to digital assets and this and that, scaring people out, of course, flooding them out, putting on the pressure, everything like that. But then what's going to happen next? I believe we're going to see these markets burn. I mean, go into numbers that most people haven't even imagined. I was there to see it even in the 2021 run. I mean, when they suppressed a lot of these assets and you saw that whole big dump in March of 2020 like this, and then nobody in their right mind would have genuinely believed that they would have seen such a bull run as they did see under the circumstances that the economies around the world were in, right? I mean, with everything being shut down, but it happened. And that's exactly what I think is going to happen here. It's the biggest wealth transfer there is. Remember, the definition of that inflation there is, and the weaponization of the currency is to literally transfer that wealth, those assets, over to the liquidators, the ones that are absolutely providing that inflationary result, which is, of course, the central banks. And we have brought that out so many times. Bursan on this channel, on this show, has provided evidence to show how central banks are absolutely marching forward with an agenda to totally and completely control everything, be the lender and borrower and lender of last resort. And that's exactly what's happening. And only a few, I genuinely believe. I think a few weeks back you had did a post and something to the effect that 95% of digital asset holders are probably going to capitulate. They're not going to make it through to see the high numbers that will eventually come. Why? Because they will have been pushed to the point of being absolutely shaken out or have been so infected with the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that they are just not going to have the sticking power. And the ones that do, it's going to be a very small minority that absolutely get moved into that. And I'm telling you, for Judy and I, look, I'll ride it all the way to zero if that's what it takes, because I can see down the road of what's coming. I genuinely believe in it, and I know from that perspective of seeing what's happened in times past and watching their methods. This is the one thing. A lot of people are kept so uneducated about how the powers that be move conditions around the wide world. Now we're out there, we're trying to give them, that kind of education. Of course, we come off and people label us as conspiracy theorists and this and that, when the evidence is right before you. I mean, we are literally watching it in real time when you see the German government doing this, along with other things that, excuse me, that they're doing. And on top of that, one thing you are definitely right about as well, Edo, is this is not the only card in their deck that they have to play. They got multiplicity. I mean, look, we got this whole Mount Gox repayment thing that's coming that could potentially affect this market. We got the whole Tether deal that could be completely imploded. That would be affecting the market and things like that. But I do believe a turnaround is coming. I absolutely believe that I am very bullish about what's coming in the future. I think that right now what we're seeing is a manipulated, absolutely coordinated attack against this space, along with, look, what are we seeing in the S&P right now? Like, fathom this, almost record all-time highs, one after another right now. Now, how is that happening? Well, of course, there's a few companies in there that they're just going gangbusters. But really, how's it happening? Well, it's happening because of the debt market. Now, why I say that is what's been going on is central banks have been buying up global debt all over in the UK, the gilt market here, the bond market, all that, which is causing the returns on those investments to drop. Obviously, that's forcing cash into the market. Now, at the same time as the S&P traditionally has gone up, what's happened to this space? Well, it's also gone up, except what are we seeing right now? We're seeing a suppression of this market by an absolute supply and demand overload. They're dumping the supply, right? They're dumping all this Bitcoin on the market at a time when it should be going up. And I do believe that has to do with shaking people out. But I think it's going to turn around. That's at least how I look at it and what I believe is going to happen.
And I think it will be a fast turning point, right? I don't think, I think the time, and don't take this as financial advice, but the time to load your bags, it's now. It's not, I will wait when we drop to 30 cents or 20 cents, even though I don't say it's impossible. I made a video on that. But I have my XRP bags, they are loaded up. I have buying orders in case we drop lower. And I'm not trading this XRP because I understand the technology. I understand that in my quote, in multiple cold wallets, I hold a important piece of the financial system. It's the rail. You can own the rail of the new financial system. So, and just someone asked me about WasPay. Why I'm not saying anything about it? Well, you can look on my Twitter. I spoke multiple times about WTK, and I'm very excited about it. They're going to be listed in three or four tier one exchanges next month. So I do expect some movement for that. And that also shows why you should be diversified, right? People were able to actually double, triple their money with SHX, Velo, with WTK as well. So have your XRP back, but also don't be all in XRP, because that can also trigger you. It can also trigger you to lose your patience, because then you see other coins that eventually go up. And I know a lot of people who actually lose their patience eventually because they are not diversified. If you ask me,
I think you're right.
I think diversification is extremely important, and this is something that Versen and Vandel also talk about, which is not only in digital assets, but I think you have to have a basket of assets, including, in my opinion, real estate. You have to own some real estate, land, gold, silver, precious metals. We know gold revaluation is on the horizon, so I do believe we're going to see some upwards movement for gold as well. And not to be shaken out. That's what they want.
I think, yeah, you make a very good point. Although I talk primarily about XRP, Judy and I are very diversified in that capacity. Private equity, we held real estate, also other things and things like that. Like you absolutely now in this digital asset space, you're right. I mean, we have a good sized position XRP, but we also have other assets, about 9 or 10 assets that we invest in outside of just XRP. And I do believe diversification is vitally important, and it look, if we had to liquidate various assets, we have other assets that we can sell without having to touch our XRP. And so that's something I agree, if you can. Now, not everybody can, I get that, but we've had ample time to accumulate, over years of accumulation. There are people who are entering into this space right now. Well, I'll tell you what, you can count your blessings that you're able to purchase these assets still at some of the prices that you can, because I genuinely believe a day is coming. People will weep for the prices that we see right now. It will not always be there. And in fact, in terms of that, we could see a supply crunch on especially with XRP in a massive way. If Ripple was to come out and do anything like Stellar did, where they burnt, a lot of what they held in the escrow, that right there, and circulating supply. Is that really what's circulating, or is that what it's not all what's on exchanges? In fact, what's on exchanges and available to the public is minuscule in comparison to the entire amount of XRP available. And that's the thing, like a lot of people feel like I can get it anytime I want it. Well, a day may come when you can't, and that happened before. I mean, we saw that in the United States with the SEC lawsuit and the delisting of XRP from almost every exchange. When Uphold was the only one selling it, do you realize they were putting like people could only buy or invest $500 at any time, one time? So it wasn't like you could go take, a $500,000 if you had it and just drop it in there and get it. It wasn't that available. And so this is where I look at these assets and I say, hey, right now we have opportunity to participate in the future in investing into the protocols, that the future is going to, run on. But being diversified is so vitally important because it gives you the opportunity to be liquid if you need to be liquid, but you're also exposed to see some amazing returns. And you've mentioned a couple there, like Velo. Velo, we got into that, and within a period of 5 weeks, we're up 200%. And those opportunities do exist in this space, but you got to be able to go out there and dig for them. Do your research, look for them. Don't just sit there and expect some influencer on YouTube to absolutely go out there and tell you what to buy, when to buy it, how much, and on and on. We don't do that. Not Versan, not Vandal, not yourself, not myself. We share our convictions, absolutely, for sure. But we're not out there telling you, okay, you do this and that type of thing. What we're sharing with you is techniques that you can employ to put yourself in a position where you could literally have a greater level of opportunity to prosper. But you've got to do the work, you've got to do the discipline. And that's how I kind of look at that.
I know you are a bit in a rush, right, David? I think it's 45. Gonna
Yeah,
jump
I
on
have to
some.
leave in about 5 minutes, or at least 10 minutes or whatever. But I mean, we've had a great conversation. It's gone about 30 minutes here. And I think, if I was to leave a comment, kind of like an ending comment, at least from my perspective, is don't get too troubled and shaken up about what you're seeing. Understand what it is. What we're seeing in this marketplace right now, when we see a collapsing of a lot of these prices, is sheer and utter manipulation and influence from, obviously from nation states and other major big players. And I think, we've talked about what would their motivation be in doing that? Well, their motivation in doing that is exactly what Ado has said here. And that is to kind of like put people in a position where they're being forced to liquidate so that they can shake out all these weak hands. But it's not ultimately what they plan on long term. Long term, I absolutely believe, for instance, for gold, I believe gold long term is going to be in the multiple five figures when they absolutely revalue gold, to be sure. I think when it comes to, these digital assets and how distributed ledger technology is going to be the driving force of the way the economy works in the future, having a participating in it is going to be life changing, in fact generationally changing for people going forward. But if you're allowing what's happening right now to literally destroy your confidence, I'd say this: take the reverse. What you're seeing right now proves and shows what a valuable asset these things are, that they would literally and intentionally attack it the way that they're attacking it. Because haven't we heard from all these chancellors over there at the German government, things like that, how dangerous Bitcoin is? Meanwhile, did you guys know that they were buying it up into the billions upon billions of dollars on a national level, while they were telling you how underhanded it is, and it's only for those people involved in nefarious things? Christine Lagarde, European Central Bank, poo-pooing this space like crazy, yet they've been loading up like no tomorrow. And here they are showing us their hand by dumping it in order to suppress the market. That to me says absolute volumes. That's what I'm paying attention to. That's what I encourage people to pay attention to. We always say, don't follow their advice, follow their behavior. Why are they doing it? Look at the reasons behind the scenes of what's going on geopolitically around the wide world, where these markets are globally, because they all work together, guys. These central banks, they meet together. Look, right now we have the Basel III, things that, and by July 1st, 2025, all the Basel III requirements come into play, right? 28 central banks from around the wild world are the ones that have agreed to those Basel III policies and procedures. That tells you volumes right there of what's coming. And to bring up that, like Verson is a practical expert, Vandel Verson, on the Basel III, policies and everything that's going on there. He's done some deep dives on that. And hopefully next week he's going to be back healthy and whole and everything else and, all that. But the reality is we're just seeing something being played out, a strategic initiative and plan. And this is where I say, yeah, you gotta, keep your wits about you and don't let yourself get absolutely buffaloed by the games that are being played right now. Those are my final comments. And, I really appreciate the time that these guys, and by the way, hey, hit the like and subscribe. I know we didn't say that, but you got, do that, guys. When you hit the thumbs up button, what happens is, even if you're watching this after the recording, the algorithm pushes this narrative out. Many, many, many more eyes get to see and hear it. And it's so vitally important that they do.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. It was our first show together. I mean, that we do just me and you. So very happy that I think we did a great job. And I also want to apologize, everyone. I was late today. I know we had short time already, but I had some family members visiting me. So also have been in a busy schedule here in the last week. And some of my final thoughts is, please be careful with fake accounts. They are gonna text you everywhere, and I think the more the market drops, the more you have these greedy people and people who have no moral values, that they're gonna try to go out and scam other people. And I unfortunately get messages on a daily basis. Some people sending 500, 1,000 XRP to these fake accounts that are pretending to be myself, and they create fake platforms, and they're gonna promise you, if you deposit 500 XRP today, tomorrow you're gonna have guys, this is not realistic. So I will never reach you out. And then just giving this message, because last week I got so many people being scammed that I really have to call it out. And unfortunately, I have no control over this situation. So first and foremost, I wanted to point this out. And second, I think it really comes down to patience. And I think it really comes down to understand that this is not something to be scared of. I mean, the retracement that we had in the markets, but rather it's an opportunity. Where most people see panic, I see actually opportunity. Even I that have a lot of XRP, if I truly believe it's going to be worth what we really think it's going to be worth in the future, I'm just buying more XRP, and I have my buying orders ready. Now, the final advice is that I understand that some people might be going through difficult situation financially, and I have been there as well in the past, and you just see, maybe you understand the potential, but you don't have the liquidity, you don't have the capital. And I understand it can happen to anyone at some period in the life, but really take these next months and perhaps looks for something different, like a side hustle, or you can try to flip things on the marketplace. I know people who are making sometimes 500, 1,000, $1,500 per month just flipping things on the marketplace. So it's really about innovation. I think if you have the opportunity right now to bring some extra liquidity from your 9 to 5 job, I think that's the right moment to start, or perhaps building an audience online. I think it's a great timing. So these are my last advices for today. Do you want to add something more, David?
No, I think that was great and a great encouragement to people. One thing that Judy and I did, just as an aside, is we set up a no account. So every time we said no to Starbucks, no to this, no to that, no to going out to eat, this and that, we would set the money we would have spent aside. So at the end of the month, we would take that and we would have that money to go out and invest with. Sometimes it was only a few $100s, but that few $100s when we were investing, look, translated into thousands of dollars later on, when we hit the top of the bull market. So don't despise the day of small beginnings, like the scripture says, because you don't know how a little investment could make a big, big change for you. But you really nailed it, Ito. I appreciate it. And by the way, thank you. You did an amazing job, directing this conversation, and really, really appreciated it.
Yeah, thank you, David. Usually is Versan the one that is the moderator. I just try my
Yeah.
best here. So hopefully next week we're gonna have both of them back, and we're gonna be the four of us as it has always been. So thank you,
Yeah.
everyone. And yeah, I think we covered everything for today. Have a
Absolutely. All
great
right, guys, be blessed
uh,
and hit that thumbs up.
thank you.